Okay, we are here, joined at the beautiful Banff Springs Hotel with James Butler. James, how are you doing?
Amazing. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. James, you are a Canadian military combat veteran, a former clearance diver, and you're currently the owner of Reclaiming Warrior. And from what my good friend Eric Robb tells me, you're a certified badass as well. Again, I just want to thank you so much for coming on. One of the first questions I wanted to ask you was how it was that you made kind of that transition from high school, not really knowing what you're going to do, into the Canadian military. So you can shed a bit of light on that?
Yeah. And I mean, we were kind of talking about this before, but I think with anything, you're in a circumstance and you're looking at where you are in your life, and you look back and you wonder, like, how did I actually get here? What are the choices that I had to make to really have, me walk down this path and end up in that place? And for me, it was kind of a series of choices that inevitably led up, I find myself in Afghanistan, trying to find bombs. And so, kind of thinking about that guy, going back to the guy in high school being like, hey, do you know what you're signing up for? I think he would have been a little bit surprised. But for me, I'm the kind of guy that always wants to wear the cape. I guess you could call it the hero's disease or something like that, that archetype of the kind of person that wants to be at the front line, be, maybe the middle child center of attention. But either way, there was definitely this call towards Afghanistan was happening. There was, a big call to men going off and really doing something for the country. And so, it was between that and going to art school to be a fine painter, which to me is a hilarious dichotomy now. But at the time, I think I have those two parts, which I think we'll get into in the interview later on. But, I knew that I probably wasn't going to make that much money as a painter, and I wanted to have a profession. I wanted to have a life. A good mentor told me, you'll always be an artist if you want to be an artist, but go do what makes you happy and go do something that's going to really provide for a family.
So what was the draw with the military? Was it kind of the adrenaline, or like you're saying, the hero's rush, I guess, or?
Yeah, I mean, I try to think back to what that guy was thinking at the time. like what were you actually thinking? But I think what it came down to was every weekend as a kid, and even up to high school, I was in the woods. I was building forts, I was, dirt biking, I was adventuring on my own anyways, and I knew that no matter what I did, I didn't want to sit behind a desk. That was always the thing that I said. I don't want to sit behind a desk. And so I think the big draw was actually just to get out and experience the world, to go do things. And like I said, with a big push for the country supporting a war in Afghanistan, it just kind of felt like that's where I belong. That's where I have to go. So
what was your background during training before you went out there? Like, was it kind of infantry, or was there another aspect that you were focusing on?
Yeah, I think, you pick trades when you go into the military. They say, like, do you want to drive something? Do you want to fly something? Do you want to be behind a desk? I mean, it's an entire community, behind the service. And so for me, I knew that I wanted the adventure side. Like, I want to be the guy that's doing the most.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, like, my father was in the military. He was traveling around the world on airplanes. My mom was in the military. She worked with, at first she packed ejection seats for fighter planes.
No way.
So strange. Love you, Mom, but
yeah.
So strange. And then she worked with search and rescue technicians. And those are the guys that are jumping out of the planes and rescuing people in the backwoods. Or out at the ocean. And before 9/11, as a kid, I was in the airplane watching these dudes jumping out of the planes, skydiving and diving.
No way.
And I thought, like, that's what I want my life to be, like an adventure. Not really knowing the adventure side of Afghanistan, but I knew that I wanted to do something like that. And actually, it kind of reminds me. So I did know that I wanted to go do that job, search and rescue. And I knew that you have to choose a trade that you can use as a stepping stone to get into that. So I picked combat engineer because you get to, they're the frontline guys, they're the most technical, they get to kind of do a little bit of everything, And normally you get enough experience that if you want to go off for a specialized trade like SARTAC, clearance diver,
Yeah.
even special forces, it's a great place to kind of hone your skills.
So as a combat engineer, if I'm not mistaken, that's where you literally blow stuff up.
Yes. It's the trade that gets to blow stuff up. Yeah, I mean, you both build bridges and you blow them up.
Jeez.
You both build structures and you blow them up. It's an extraordinary trade that gives you a lot of different aspects that you can look at. Like that's actually where I got my diving career, was in the Army, which most people can't put together. Like, how does the Army dive? But you know, I learned to dive and blow stuff up.
Right.
To carry explosives with me while I'm diving, and then be trained to put them on bridges. And
Are you kidding me? Jeez, it's like straight James Bond.
well, yeah, there would be some times where you wear a full dry suit and you've got everything on underneath that you need to wear, and so you dive and it'd be pitch black. I mean, so black you can't see your hand in front of your face. You're reaching out to grab your buddy's thumb to make sure that he's alive and still good. You're swimming and you've got this tiny little compass board in the middle of nowhere in this like black lake, and you come out to a beach in the middle of the night and you zip down and you're in everything dry, perfect, good to go, stash your stuff and away you go.
Oh my gosh.
And so I mean, at times it did feel like you're doing kind of the James Bond type thing.
So what's that like for you, or what was that like for you when you're getting off that plane to Afghanistan and the shit is real? Like, what was the feeling for you?
I said this in a keynote speech one time, and I was talking about stress and saying like how I thought I knew stress. And before you land in Afghanistan, you land in another country, and they give you what you need before you land into the main country, Afghanistan. And I remembered, we land and we think like, we are so cool, we are about to go to Afghanistan. And so you land in kind of the base camp, and they say, hey, take this frag vest, like this bulletproof vest, you're going to need this. And then you've got your gun, and then they give you bullets, and they say, hey, like, to get back on the plane, you need these bullets. And you think like, I can't even take a lighter on a plane. Like, you want me to take this like loaded gun on the plane? And it's because if the plane goes down in between the two places, you got to fight, because it's all hostile country in between.
Right.
And and so then they turn off all the lights inside, everything turns red, and we're doing contour flying. So we're like flying erratically. It's crazy.
What's the benefit of contour flying?
I mean, for the most part, if you wanted to shoot at a plane, you couldn't lock onto it.
Okay.
The plane's just flying erratically, and is what I understand. I mean, at the time, that's what they told me.
Right.
Maybe they were just messing with us.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I remembered thinking at that time, like looking across at people and being like, this is real. Like, this is actually real. We're going to do this. So we land in Afghanistan. It's the middle of the night. It's so hot you can't even imagine. And the first night we're sitting there, I'm in this, it's like a sea can that they've got bunk beds in. And, I decided I was going to do like a journal while I was there. And the first night, I only wrote one page in it. It was the very first day. And I land and I write like literally the first line, you are so cool. Look at you. Like, you are in Afghanistan. And I literally write that first line, like, you are so cool, you're in Afghanistan. And the alarm started going off. And this woman's voice comes over and it says, rocket attack, rocket attack. And I mean, we've literally been in the country for less than 2 hours. And, I didn't know that Kandahar Airfield gets rocket attack almost every single night. Mm-hmm. It's so big that, rocket could land in the camp and you would still, it's so far away. We're talking like miles.
So there's a potential you couldn't even see the rocket, yeah.
But I mean, you think about it, you just land in the country, you're saying you're so cool, and then suddenly it gets rocketed, and it's like, I am not cool. Book closed, not writing that anymore. And the very next day you get on a helicopter, you're out to the front line, and then 8 months later you come back in and go home.
Oh,
you got a slight break in the middle.
Yeah.
But for the most part, there's no, real adjustment period. You're just, you train for this. Get on the helicopter and go. I think it was about the third day of being in Afghanistan. I'm out looking for bombs, like real bombs. And the guys that had been there for months, they were seasoned vets. They were walking around they knew what they had to do. But for us, it felt so foreign. And, later when we kind of talk about the personal growth aspect of things, it was a really cool demonstration of something they call I know this now, the hedonic treadmill. And what the hedonic treadmill is this term in psychology that says that we assume that incidents in our life will change our lives forever and they'll never be the same. That's why we think when we win the lottery, everything will be different. If we, got arrested and went to prison, life is over. If a family member dies, but what happens is, these crazy circumstances will happen to us, and very soon that becomes normal again, and life returns to the normal kind of feeling. It's because, we are a clearing for our experience. Our minds, the way that we perceive the world, it really is the clearing that we experience the world around us. So even if you win the lottery and you think, my life is forever different because I've got abundance, well, pretty soon, you've got more money, but the same problems you had, they just continue, because it's not based on money, which is the illusion. And so we look at the micro scale of that, like when I get a new girlfriend, life will be different. When I get a new job, life will be different. When I go on vacation a little bit more, or when I get 6 figures versus 50,000, we think that life's gonna be different forever. And I think it's what I learned in Afghanistan, and I got to see it in almost like a visceral way, was you land and you think, my life is never going to be the same. And honestly, like 10 days later, this is normal.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is just the normal thing. You wear this gear, you go on these marches, it's this hot, you drink this much water, like 10 liters a day, and that becomes normal. And then you almost come home, and home is surreal. And you think, oh my God, like life is never going to be the same. And then, you've got a transition period, and it becomes normal again.
Right.
And so I got to see this hedonic treadmill kind of firsthand, because I've gone through all of the ups and downs, going from war to having extreme business success, and then going to the plunders of near-death experience. And every single time, life becomes normal again. And it's almost like if you can count on that you're going to make things normal again, it kind of takes the significance out. If you assume like life is going to become normal again, then one, you're not so putting your chips on, the lottery, hoping that it's going to one day change your life, and you can actually do something practically right now. And the other side, when something horrible happens, you can go, okay, cool, like this too shall pass. And, we'll get back to where we need to be.
So, in a situation like Afghanistan, obviously some horrific things happened over there. Is that what's running through your head after something like that happens? Just, things will return to normal eventually, like...
In hindsight, you can see it. In hindsight, you go, oh, that's what happened. It's kind of a different experience, because when you're over there and something horrific happens, you're in such a primal state. We've got our ego here, which is like, hey, did this selfie get me a ton of likes? Like, is my business, like, do people like my picture? The very kind of ego level conversation. And I found in Afghanistan, you're actually having more of like a primal experience.
Mm-hmm.
How do I stay alive? Where's food coming from? What are the moves that I need to do to survive? And so some of the conversations that you'd normally have, they're just not there. There's no time for it. 2, there's no space for it. You're in like a necessity-based conversation. What do we need to do right now to get the job done? Don't worry about anything else. You can't. You don't have the time for it or the space. Just be with what you need to be with.
So what's that like? One thing that I feel is incredibly important for oneself is like sleep. So how is sleeping out there?
I think full transparency. I used to call sleep the time machine, because you knew if you were sleeping, you'd be closer to going home.
Really? Yeah.
When you fall asleep, you wake up half an hour later. You're like, yes, 1/2 an hour less. But you sleep a lot. People sleep, I think it gets messed up by stress a lot.
Yeah.
So, you definitely get into those kind of stories. For myself, I've never had a problem with sleep. Sleep has always been something that I've always had a very good relationship with. I've got a good mindset with sleep. I could have the most stressful thing, like even right now, I could have a big problem with a client, go to bed half an hour later, wake up with the same, kind of feeling I went to bed with, but I still got my sleep.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that I'm incredibly fortunate for that. But I know that that's not the experience for everybody.
Well, and I could only see, like, I'm a pretty crappy sleeper, so, like, I could only imagine myself over there. If I don't sleep, I become very neurotic, right? So, like, if that, and under that type of stress, like, geez. So, now, what was, when was the year, I guess, like, that you decided, or you said called the quits with the Afghan war and stuff, like when was it that you came back, and was that a decision you made, or was that just the end of your tenure out there?
Well, the way it works is you go on a tour, or tour of duty, let's say, and so the entire tour is about 8 months. You've got about a I think about I can't remember the exact date, but 20 days in between, they fly you home or wherever you want to go, you get a little bit of rest, and then you go back. For me, I was there for 30 days, immediately left, came back for 20 days, and then went back for about 6 months straight. And so at the end of your 6 months, you've got a new group of people, they come in, you hand over your information, and then they take over and you go home.
And sorry, that's back to Canada or back to the base?
Back to Canada.
Back to Canada, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Back to Canada for the break, and then also back to Canada.
Yeah. Now, what was the TSN turning point in the transition from your military career to what you're currently doing now?
Yeah. So I went on, I guess you could call it the hero's quest or the hero's journey, and I knew that I wanted to do something more than even that. Like most people when they come back from Afghanistan, they go like, holy cow, I've got a personal capacity that I never even could have imagined in a million years. And then you come back and I want to do something more. I want to have an even greater experience. And we can kind of talk about that even later as well.
Yeah.
So I came back and I knew I wanted to do more, and I kind of shifted from one trade into the other, and I went into this trade called clearance diving. And what clearance diving is...
Oh, so it's still in the military. Okay, yeah.
So they still work with bombs, just a lot deeper, about 200 feet. You're diving with like different breathing systems. It's so you're disarming bombs, but even deeper. And so I knew I wanted to transition into that, and it was actually in the training for that. It was about I get in the training and I had a catastrophic failure of my lung. So bad that I literally wake up in the hospital and they're lancing my lung because they tell me that I've got 3.5 liters of fluid.
Oh my gosh!
In the pleura space, like completely outside, and so to make a very long story, which could be an entire podcast.
Yeah.
But I go through 2 massive surgeries. I internal bleed. I bleed out. Like they tell me I'm going to die. They say, listen, man, like we don't know where you're bleeding from. And I mean, at this time, I'm so messed up. I wake up after about 10 days. I'm kind of in and out, but for 10 days, I come out and I've lost about 65 pounds of body weight. Like my body had such a massive infection that I'm just like skin and bones. Couldn't walk for a couple months.
So sorry, not to backtrack, but I'm just curious how that happened. So it was a training exercise, and it's something that you typically do all the time?
Yeah. So it's it's kind of a diving accident, but it's also not, because what ended up happening, they tell me, is that my lung had developed some sort of infection just through training so hard. Like you're in the cold water, you're out of the cold water. You're running on empty almost every single day. Like you're running pretty much a triathlon most days. It's like I can't even explain how hard the training is.
Really? Yeah.
And so apparently my lung had was damaged of some sort, and my body was just not even aware of it. It was saying like you still have to push, you still have like a mission to accomplish, so keep going. My face would go blue, my hands would go blue after runs, and here I thought I was like I'm eating too many cupcakes. I guess I'm getting fat.
Yeah.
And but meanwhile, I didn't know that my lung was slowly having it was slowly filling up with fluid. It hadn't quite collapsed. It was being able to hold it off.
So it's not fluid from the water you're diving in. It's actual fluid that's just maybe from compression or.
Yeah, I mean they said to get into the medical term.
Yeah.
So apparently I had breathed, inhalation,
yeah.
strep throat. Streptococcal, and because of the pressure, they say it went through my lung into the microscopic pleural space. So it developed something called pleural empyema.
Okay.
Which just means pneumonia kind of thing outside the lung, and so over a course of time, fluid had been building, but my body was able to hold it off. And while diving, the pressure was just so deep, my body just said enough's enough, and all of the intercostal muscles just locked up, and then next thing you know, the whole kind of medical system starts kind of kicking into action, and I wake up, I've got 7 chest tubes in here. I'm like literally watching the red stuff in my body pour out, and they're trying to put fluid in this side and it's coming out this side, and you really don't know what's going to happen. And the part for me was, I look back and kind of laugh because I got out of the surgeries, and it's literally 2 days afterwards I'm like, I'm yellow all over. I can't walk. And the doctor comes. He's like, man, we're so glad you're alive. And I say like, so when can I go back to diving? And the guy goes like, we can talk about that another time. But like, we're happy that you're alive.
So were you essentially in a coma on the way out of it, or?
No, I mean, it like pretty much just so pumped full of morphine.
Yeah.
It was just like the whole experience is
You've got no real recollection of.
Well, my red blood cell count was at 52 when it should be at 152.
Oh my God.
So there was definitely some huge complications
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And to kind of like all the way back to the TSN turning point.
Yeah.
It was actually spread over a year. So they told me, if you get back in shape, maybe we'll consider you diving again.
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled out all the stops. I hired a personal trainer. I went and saw a therapist to make sure that I was like on top of my mentality. Hired a nutritionist, started training. It was like a Rocky movie all over again. Starting in the gym, not being able to lift, like, my friends laughing because on the lat pull down, I could only do the bar, like no actual weights. And then I actually did it with such a well thought out plan, because I had hired all these professionals, that I not only surpassed my original fitness, but like they say what I was doing was almost a miracle. I've got scar tissue all over my left lung. I still have these like really bad scars in my intercostals. And because of the level I was training at, I was able to get beyond the fitness that I had even had before my injury. And this was over, we're talking about 8 months.
Yeah.
Go in to do the tests, and they say like, man, it looks like you're gonna go back to diving. Like, we have no idea how, looks like you're gonna go back. And so the way that going back is, there was another course about to start that I was gonna jump in on, and it was gonna start in 3 days, and the tests were gonna come back 3 days before the thing, or before the course starts. So they sit me down like this 3 days before, and they say, listen, James, like, the tests came back, they're horrible, you can't dive.
So the tests were mostly focused on your lung capacity and.
It was actually like, it was to find if there was scar tissue.
Okay,
because
right.
with pressure and
Yeah.
diving, scar tissue is just, it's a no.
No good. Yeah.
And so they tell me like, you're never gonna dive again. So you think like, okay, you can't dive, but diving was my career. So diving was the job that I was actually doing. So when they say no diving, what they're actually saying is the trajectory that you've planned for your life, you can no longer do. And because of that, I couldn't go back to any sort of like diving type trade. So even search and rescue, who dives, it was kind of even the persona that I had built for myself, the group of people that I hung out with, they all kind of stayed in this community. So it was almost like you kind of single-handedly in one stroke lose your community. And because of that, it forced me to say like, well, the old community that I have, it's not here anymore. So now what? What do you go do when you've essentially lost what you've been building? And it's when I hired a coach. And the more we got working together, the more we found that, hey, what we want to do is I want to be a coach.
So how does that selection process happen for you when you're looking for a coach for yourself? Like, is that something you just want to Google, or did you talk to a friend, or how did you pick the proper coach for yourself?
I think that is such a good thing to bring up, because so back then, talked to a couple of people and said, hey, who should I hire? Which is really smart on my part to get almost like a referral, like, who do you know who I should actually work with? And I was connected with a really, really extraordinary coach at the time. And, but now, when you look, if you want to hire a coach or you want to work with anybody, I mean, we're talking coach, consultants, therapists, whatever service you want to take you to where you want to go, like to have the experience you want to look for the impact, right? So you want to actually have a conversation with them, and you want to have them create an impact for you. You want them to do their craft, the thing that you're hiring them to do, and feel the effects of it. Come in and say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with right now. Give me some support. And any coach who really, really, truly wants to support people will say, yeah, of course. Like, let's have a conversation and get you where you want to go, close the gap, if you will, and really show you kind of how they work.
Okay, welcome back for part 2 of our podcast series with James Butler. James, when we left off in part 1, we were talking about the selection process of your kind of personal coach after your diving accident. So how did everything transpire after you selected your coach, and do you still keep in touch with the coach that you ended up with?
I still keep in touch.
Yeah.
I've moved off, and I hired another coach who I'm still working with.
So even, because you are a personal coach,
Yes.
even as a personal coach, you have your own personal coach.
I am so glad we talked about that. We're probably going to get to a couple of points where I'm like, this is a pet peeve for me.
Yeah.
So, I think to break the system, where you look at like the landscaper with the lawn that isn't cut, or you look at the doctor that, smokes and drinks well beyond what they even know is healthy. For me, it's as a coach, like to look at the concept of what even people hire a coach for. It's really to assist the client to get somewhere that they maybe could never get by themselves. They're not giving them advice. They're not saying like, and maybe they would give advice, but for the most part, they're supporting the client to see something that they've never seen before. So what most people think is that there is like this arrival point, like we have made it. We have learned all of the world's knowledge, and suddenly we are, in the self-development industry, we are developed. And I think as a coach, if you are a coach and you don't have a coach, it seems a little bit strange to me. Because what we're really asking for people is to continuously be the best version of themselves. And so as a coach, I mean, the energy that I get from my coach, I give to my clients.
Right.
I mean, I am growing continuously. I am constantly stepping outside my comfort zone day after day, month after month, year after year. So that it's from an energetic standpoint, I'm also giving that to my client, saying like, listen, I don't have to walk every path before you to support you, but there is energetically a ton of value to continuously looking at your own, like, your own back of your head. What are the blind spots that you don't see? And I think that when you work with clients, you're always trying to develop yourself to then bring something new to the client, to bring new perspective, a new clearing for them to step into. So, of course I have a coach.
Yeah.
So that is what I would say.
Yeah. So now kind of back to the story, still in touch with your coach now, as far as your training with him, how did all that go down? And then how did that lead you to where you are today?
It's a really funny story. So, not funny the story itself. People say, they go, okay, so we got a guy who did bomb disposal, went to Afghanistan, became super badass like the intro. Your coach must be like so crazy. And I say, well, she is actually this like, and my current coach, she is about, this tall on me, the complete opposite of everything that I am.
Yeah.
She's an extraordinary leader, works with women in film. She's a lawyer as well. And she also got into the coaching industry. And I think it's an important thing to look at when you're looking for a coach. Like, I've got powerful leadership down. I mean, that's something that I'm not born with, but I've developed through the military. That's not my growing point. My growing point is actually to be pulled into connection and authenticity and vulnerability, and the parts that, as a male leader, feel really, really uncomfortable. Like, that's my edge. And so when you're looking for a coach, you don't always want to go with what you're comfortable with. You actually want to go with the people that are going to pull you in a direction that you're not necessarily even thinking about. Because at the end of the day, if we're talking to leaders, we're actually looking for creating more capacity, a capacity to be with. As a leader, can I be in an emotional conversation? Can I be in an authentic conversation? Can I be in a connected conversation? Can I be in a conversation with someone about spirituality? Even though I may not be spiritual, do I have the capacity to be in the conversation with that person? Instead of saying, oh, I don't believe that. I can't be there with you.
Yeah.
So a lot of people find it really strange, the coach that I work with. But to me, she's extraordinary because of she is all the things that I don't have or that I'm looking to grow into.
So just to refresh the listeners and the viewers of the podcast, how'd that selection process go down when you first met her? And
actually so I'm talking about the second coach, but the
one that you have now. Okay, yeah.
So the way that, for the narrative of the story, with my first coach, I had decided, someone introduced me and I said, okay, great, amazing coach. She introduced me and said, I think you want to be a coach. It sounds like everything that you want to build, because it's important to know, I knew that I had to build a new career, but I didn't really know what to do. And so the genius of the coach, she said, well, don't look at what you're going to do, look at the experience that you want. What's the experience you want to have of a career? And I said, well, I want to work with people. I want to be a leader of some sort. I want to travel. I want to make an impact in the world, and I know that I want to work, something to do with business, but I don't really know what that is. And so we really distinguished that it was coaching. So from that, I thought, well, okay, I need to go get an education in coaching. I need to know something. And so I joined a coaching program in the States out of Seattle. And it's called Accomplishment Coaching. I actually now work with them as a leader. So when I went there, it's such an extraordinary course because when you're going through the program, they give you a coach, and to actually mentor you through the process of learning to be a coach. So on one end, you're taking in content and learning how to be with distinction, contexts, and belief systems, and learning how to work with clients. But you're also getting coached on yourself, because it's actually, being a coach is more about personal transformation, so that you can be transformation for other people. Like, you have to experience what you're helping people with and supporting them for. So they'd introduced me to this coach on the program, and that's the only reason I left the first coach, was because I was given a new coach, and we had such an extraordinary experience. I saw the growth of my life just skyrocket.
So literally through this conference, you saw yourself developing?
Yeah, so it was a year-long program.
Okay, yeah.
And it's not, you're not there for a year. It was, you go down for intensives, and you're also working throughout the months, doing kind of like calls and video calls and stuff like that. But for me, it was extraordinary to see the trajectory of my life. Like, it is unpredictable. I mean, to go from, there was a point where I was like, I'm in the military, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, like, I don't know, to literally a handful of months later, being flown first class down to the, to work with a university football team.
Jeez.
And, to really, be seen as that person and learn to bring the skills from my life into a new profession, and not start a new profession and think, I don't know anything. Because it's actually marrying the experience that you have with new concepts and abilities to work with people. So
were you were saying you went and worked with a Div 1 NCAA football team. Were those connections brought through that seminar that you took in Seattle, or that's something you had to hustle for yourself?
No, I think with anything, when I was starting off, like, I really believe in try not to reinvent the wheel too much. Find people that are already successful, find ways to learn from them. And so at the time, I was actually working with another company, and I was contracting myself as a coach to be a coach for that company. And through the ways that they were networking and doing things, they kind of helped me get the introduction. But at the end of the day, you really have to own that you held the space where you were given the introduction to go on and do that. And it's not something that I could have foreseen for myself. And just through the coaching process, you learn to really to own. Like, you don't need to go get new things. You need to actually stop believing that stop disbelieving what you actually are. And so to really, I don't want to say reclaim, but claim the power that you actually have, the value that you actually have, the worth that you actually have to accomplish, to do things.
Now, from there, you went on to start your own business, or was there a few stepping stones in the way before then?
Billions of stepping stones.
Yeah.
So I can't even count all the stepping stones. So,
were you still hampered by the lung issues at all, or?
It kind of comes and goes.
Okay.
When it gets cold, I get a little seized up.
Yeah.
Put some WD-40 on it, and away we go. Puff that out. For me, it was. I'm trying to think about how to put this. When you finally look at what your, I'm going to say, purpose is.
Yeah.
When you look at like, hey, what's my highest calling? When I actually opened myself up to that, it was like the entire world completely made sense. I knew the direction I had to go, the people I had to work with, the path that I had to take, and it was this experience of, you're watching the current state of our world right now. People are still going back to Afghanistan, although most of us have pulled out. We still have conflict over and over and over, and we're watching, probably right now, like the U.S. political.
A little bit of a sideshow.
And what I realized is that, as in a leadership role, I started to find how lonely it is. It is very lonely to be a leader, to own your own company, whether you're an entrepreneur or a startup, or the CEO of a Fortune 500, 100 company. When you're at the top, it's lonely. And I started looking at, if leaders were able to have more capacity to be with the problems that they actually see and face, then they would actually have a higher likelihood of impacting those problems and actually shifting things. So what I really declared for myself was, to work with world leaders on world problems in order to create the capacity in the leader in order to actually effectively take on those problems and move forward. And at the time, it felt so grandiose, so crazy, like how on earth am I going to develop a company that's going to do that? And I think the TSN turning point for that was realizing that as a leader, my job is not to do everything. My job is to find extraordinary people and put them in the right place. Mm-hmm. So what I actually do is I work with, honestly, some of the most powerful people on the planet, and I give them or help them see the most powerful mission that they can actually take on. Because a lot of times what you see is incredibly powerful people who are actually have lives or missions in their life that they don't even match who they are. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've got someone that is a very high performer, an incredible leader, can accomplish so much, and they're doing something so below what they're actually capable of. And so for me to bring their mission up to where they actually are capable, or bring them up to the mission that they want, so that they can actually accomplish what they want to see and be, mavericks and change makers.
So is this something that's, through consultation and, several meetings with the client that you're able to determine, maybe you're not in the right place, you should be doing something completely else or different, sorry?
I mean, it's very different for every person, depending on the veil that they put up.
Right.
But for the most part, it is so easy. I mean, let's say you're working with a real estate agent or something. I'm just going to give you a hypothetical circumstance. And you get in a conversation with them and you ask them, what do you want? Like, what is it you actually want? So I just want to make more business. I want to sign more clients. I want to sell more houses. Cool, for what? I want to make more money. Okay, great. So what do you actually want? Like, if you could make money anyway, how would you actually want to make money? Because I actually don't get that you want to do this. It's just the way you know how to make money.
Right.
And the things that people say, like when you ask, like, how would you actually want to do it if you could just do it anyway? I mean, it's almost like they've had it the whole time, and they're like, oh, do you mean the secret piece of paper that I don't tell anybody? I'd love to read to you that I'd actually like to be this.
Yeah.
And it's whether people acknowledge it or not, there is both a level of being and a thing that they would like to be doing that they're a yes to doing it, but they don't know how, so they become a no. I want to do it that way, but I don't know how to make it work, so I just don't. Whether it's like starting your own business or being a professional speaker or, starting a podcast or something like that, there's, everybody's got that experience that they want to create. And you can tell when people aren't living in that, because it's almost like they're completely out of integrity. Like, they don't wake up ready to take on what they want to take on. They actually sometimes feel like a fraud because they're like, this isn't what I meant to be doing. And there's a disingenuousness to it, and you can pick up on it right away.
So have you met people who have, made millions, very successful, and just hate what they do?
I wouldn't say hate. I think the experience, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, all sorts of people, but I think the experience that some people have, whether they're doing the right thing, but they're doing it the wrong way, mm-hmm. not the wrong way, but like the way they don't want to do it, or they have gotten to a certain level of success and they go, it feels hollow. Like, I thought once I made my first 6-7 figures, it would feel there, like we would have arrived. And it just doesn't feel quite right because it's not they went for something to create an experience. They didn't know it, but they were building a business to get money or something or stature or position or authority to create a certain experience. But they didn't get that experience once they got there. So they become this kind of forever seeker, looking for the thing that will kind of fill that experience that they're looking for. And maybe it's to be in the same job, but they want to approach it from a different way. Or maybe it's a completely different job. Or maybe it's, not based on the job at all. It's the experience they want to have with other people.
Right.
And we're going to get into like the super high level for a second. But for people who feel like they, connection with other people is based on their personal value, they will go to find a position that will give them the most value because they think once they get that value, they will then get connection. And we don't really know it. We can't distinguish it. But the beautiful part is that connection is available to those people right now.
Mm-hmm.
They can choose it in this moment. They just don't quite know how.
Right.
And so they go looking and spending tons of money on courses and changing jobs and breaking up with people and marrying people and breaking up with people and marrying people and over and over and over, because they're looking for the thing they don't know they're looking for. And so, the type of coaching that I do, which is very deep inner working with people, you're actually looking for, the deep desire,
Mm-hmm.
the thing that they want, that they're looking for, but they don't quite know how to get there. Does that make sense?
For sure.
Yeah.
So once you've obviously done quite a bit of work identifying the issue, you find out what they actually want to do. What are the techniques that you implement to get them going?
So it is confronting.
Yeah.
People,
and that can obviously be pretty tricky at some points.
I think it is because, if you kind of think about it like this, you've got, let's call it love, or like
Right.
positive energy on one side, and you've got fear on the other side. And it's a ball, and it grows from the center. So the more desire, the more love, the more you really truly want something, the more fear grows with it. So what you have in light, you also have in darkness, that kind of concept.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get people present to what they truly want, they've got this mechanism that kicks up, and you would not even believe what it does. It is, the spitting, punching, yelling, swearing kind of thing, because you're confronting people and showing them, like, listen, this is what you want, and this is what you're doing. The choices you're making are having, this experience. And it's almost like you've gone to their house and you've taken all those junk drawers that they throw things in and forget.
Yeah.
You've dumped it in the middle of the floor and said, now deal with it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to clean it up. You asked to, what are you not seeing? Here it is. What are you going to do about that? And it's really, really confronting with people, because they're given this is what I want, and this is what I have, and I know I can have this, but I have to make choice. And I have to do very uncomfortable things. And that's really confronting.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's the exact thing that they want in life, it's incredibly confronting. And so, there's a part where the process to get to that is you have to show people the mechanisms that they're using to protect themselves. You have to show them the things about themselves they don't want to see, and the things that they'd really love to see, but both parts.
Right.
The full, authentic, exposed, open kimono, this is what you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't say so, they see it for themselves.
Right.
I don't diagnose anybody. But it's really hard to see that.
Now, once you've had that, I guess, breakthrough moment,
Yeah.
What takes place after that? Are you just done with the coach, or?
All right. So often what happens is it's kind of like a possibility hangover.
Right.
So you see all that is possible, and it's almost like, imagine you take a big rock and you've got a foot of water, like a lake of water. And you take this big rock and you drop it in the pond, and all the water disappears for a second,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see the bottom. And you're like, holy cow, like that's what the bottom of the water looks like? Because you've hit it with such force, all the water moves. Well, what happens after that is all the water that was there comes crashing in twice as hard.
Right.
It throws back up at your face.
Right.
And so what happens is it's almost like an adrenaline rush. You get everything that you want, and then you're going to fall back twice as hard. And I often tell people, like, when you have breakthroughs, when you have those experiences of like incredibly deep authenticity or connection, you meet that person that you're like, I'm so in love with that person. Something kind of breaks open. Expect the other side of it to go through about a week or 2 weeks, and sometimes even months of just complete down.
Really?
When I finally decided what I wanted to do for my company, and it was like I could feel it. It was like everything in the universe was saying, you have to do this. It made sense. For about, a week, I was like on point, on mission, like go, 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 go. But then the hangover set in. And it was like, I can't do this. And then it was, you start to find all the reasons why you can't do it.
Right.
Because it starts to hide, like, you actually are in love with this. You don't want to be devastated.
Yeah.
You don't want to get your heart broken by not getting this thing now. So, once you see it, that's when the work starts. You've had the breakthrough, you can see it, but now it's actually making that a part of your reality.
Mm-hmm.
To continuously practice being with it, being in the vision of it, seeing that it's possible. I know that it's from a conceptual side, but it's almost like, you say, you can go do this, and you go, wow, I feel like that's possible. Well, the next day, you got to practice getting back to that place, and practice getting back to that place. And eventually, when you lose it for a day at a time, and then 10 minutes at a time, and then you slip out of it a second at a time, and then you go, that's who I am. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So it's like anything, it's a muscle. You have to keep working at staying in possibility, in ownership over the vision that you're creating for yourself.
So in order to stay in that moment, I guess, or in the place where you see yourself being, do you have your clients constantly visualize themselves being in a successful place where they should be?
Everything except for should.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they will be. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, and there's, so a lot of times you got to create a vision for yourself to continuously live into. And so what we do is, get someone incredibly close to their vision, get them present to it, get them to embody it, get to feel what it's like to actually be at that place before they're even there, and get them to write it out. I mean, anybody who's watching this right now, 5 years from now, 1 year from now, either one, you say you wake up and you're exactly where you want to be in life. Everything, the clothes you're wearing, the scent of your room, the breakfast you eat, what does your calendar look like? What does your spouse look like? Even if you have one now, how fit are the both of you? What's the experience of the life that you want in 5 years or 1 year? As if you are writing it to yourself right now, like, hey, James, you just woke up. Guess what, buddy? This is what life looks like. Mm-hmm. You're writing it to yourself. And so, for people, like, write a page, write 2 pages, but build the narrative of what life looks like.
And it's not necessarily, writing out the things you like and then just repeating it over and over. You attach a feeling to it.
Yeah, you want to. I mean, one of the visions that I constantly work into is my greatest desire is, and I'm working on the plan right now, so it's already happening for me, but is to take a client to the top of a mountain. So just imagine we both land via helicopter. At the top of a mountain, there's just this giant canvas, just a canvas. And what we actually do is we don't come down the mountain until we know where we're going. And it's to create this experience for a client where they come to the most surreal place where, all of the world attachments, the things, the phones, the people, even the smells that they know, they're gone. And they have this fresh canvas to say, like, well, what do I actually want to do? What is the impact that I actually want to create? And to be with that person and take them through that experience. And we come down off the mountain and we create it. And, there's both that in an actual application, but then there's also that from a standing of, like, that's the level that we bring. That's the level that, we work with people. That's the level we create our companies with, and to create that experience for people. And so when you go through that narrative and you go, oh, I mean, there's a billion other things that would have had to have happened in my company for that to happen, but that's the level that I'm living into. And it was funny because it felt 5 years off or 10 years off, and in reality it was a couple months off. Because I put it into, to the vision. It was like, oh, that's not that hard. I'm going to go do it right now. I call up a helicopter guy. The next client's going to go do that.
So this is something that you did?
It is in, like, very, very...
No way. Jeez.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. All right, welcome back to part 3 of the James Butler series. James, when we left off last time, we were talking about the importance of visualization and how important that is not only for your clients but for yourself. What other techniques do you implement in personal development tactics?
Yeah, so I'm going to go through kind of some of the most important first, and kind of the, if we think about it, we can go into the subcategories. But I think, you've heard so that you are the accumulation of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Right.
I cannot emphasize how important that is. And when we think about that, most people, they're going to look around their life right now and they're going to go, oh, or they're going to go, oh. But either way, it's like this is what is right now. Versus the opportunity of saying, cool, I can actually reverse engineer that.
Right.
I can say, who are the 5 people I most want to spend my time with? And you can actually create that circle for yourself. There's the, like, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So that's kind of my tactic. It's what I've been doing. I mean, I have continuously felt insignificant in my career because I continuously put myself in rooms that I am insignificant.
Which is not a bad thing by any means.
No. And I mean, it's confronting. It's
right.
hard. We often want to surround ourselves by people we feel comfortable with. But, so that's kind of the biggest one, is really surround yourself by extraordinary people. I don't mean extraordinary people like they're constantly creating results or they're action-orientated kind of people, but a good kind of mixture of people that are up to things that you really, say that I want to be a part of that. People that call you forward, challenge you. They don't please you, they challenge you. They don't always compliment you, they challenge you. And really have that wanting to call you forward. So
Right.
it's we can make all these tactics and tips and tricks and tools, but surround yourself by extraordinary people. Even if it's like following them, like, reading articles by these people or biographies, and being called forward by people.
So you don't necessarily have to, be in contact with them or anything, but just, they are your influences, you're reading their books.
Exactly.
Okay.
Be immersed by the energy of it.
Right.
Like learn what's the mindset that they think. There's a lot of people, if anybody has money troubles, money is a mindset. And you see Think and Grow Rich, and there's all the Tony Robbins stuff, but really down to its fundamental, money has a mindset to it. And so, if you've got any incredibly wealthy friends, and they go, oh, we just got to do this. And it's not necessarily that they have the money that allows them to go do it. It's just like, oh, let's just go get money. It comes in this hand and it goes out that hand, and
Right.
that's just the way it works. And so you can really see this effortlessness to money. And I think that's it's an energy that you pick up from people. If you constantly hang around people who struggle around with money, I'm not saying get rid of those people, but just notice it contributes to your own personal story.
For sure, yeah.
You're going to pick up that story, and you're going to too be like, oh my God, this buffet is $18 versus the $15, that kind of thing. So you want to be really present to the stories that people are bringing into your life. And if they are bringing kind of the stories that you don't want, just be present, like, that's your story. Like, it's okay if money's difficult for you. I don't want it to be difficult for me. So yeah, does that make sense?
Most definitely, yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot what the question was.
So just several different tactics that you implement. Obviously surrounding people with the 5 closest or the 5 most influential or best positive influences on your life. Now, what else would you suggest for your clients?
So I think honestly one of the most important things is to create space for yourself. And when I talk about creating space, it's literally like, we look at our to-do list right now. There are a ton of things that are in that to-do list that you, one, don't need to do. They either don't bring you value, they don't bring you any closer to your goal, and they're not really a high priority for you. And now I'm going to talk to like the leadership side of things. So look at as a leader. When I'm working with a client, I often ask, how are you a leader acting as a worker? If your job is vision and really building the framework and holding the energy for your company, you can't be the dude doing data entry, because you're not creating the space to actually go out and have the creative thoughts that you really need and your company needs to move you forward. So if you're working with like even startups, they don't believe that the leader of it always thinks, I've got to be in it, I've got to have my hand on the pulse and doing everything. But they're robbing themselves of the space they need to actually think.
Right.
So if you look in your calendar right now and you say, okay, I can't get rid of anything, well then create space in your calendar just to have your thoughts. Even if it's like an hour or even 15 minutes, and you say, okay, for 15 minutes I'm going to do nothing but create space for myself to have good ideas. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're investing in just space. That's all it is. Go for a hike. Just have nothing, because that's when the ideas come to you.
Right.
And that's when you go, it'd be really easy if we just went and did this. So I call it, it's a game of creating space. How much space can you create in your life? Can you take a task and either get rid of it? Can you delegate it? Can you pay someone to do it? Can you minimize it? What can you do to actually take it from what it is and kind of shrink it and put more white in the calendar so that you have more space to actually have brilliant ideas and bring energy into the company to then give? Versus, the experience that I think a lot of leaders and entrepreneurs have, which is that run daily, the burnout, the drive, and they think like as a culture that's the way it's supposed to be. But we look, most startups and entrepreneurs don't actually work out. So maybe that's not how we're supposed to be.
Right.
When we look at like maybe there's a smarter way to do this, and to create the space to actually think of the ideas that will get you out of the rut that most companies are in. So we got, surrounding yourself by extraordinary people. We've got creating space. I'm trying to think of the name, and it's not coming to me right now, but it really comes down to having someone in your life who shows you what you don't see. To actually drop the ego and say, I don't know everything. And I don't mean run out and hire a coach. I don't say don't go hire a consultant. But really look at getting that person that is going to, be the honest person for you and show you what you don't see. Say like, hey, I don't really want to tell you this, but based on the way you dress, it's not actually in line with what you're declaring for your company. It does not match. Mm-hmm. And I get there's like, the Steve Jobs or the Mark Zuckerberg of
right.
wear the same thing every day. That's cool. But there's also the level of like, it kind of shows like they're a little bit out of integrity with what their company is. If their company is about excellence, if their company is about either prestige or performance or something like that, and they're not quite matching that, just as an example, that person that can actually identify that and say, hey, like, kind of looks like you're a little bit of integrity with your company. What's that about? So having that person that's going to show you what you don't actually see. I think I can't really argue the importance of that.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I want to know, kind of change gears a bit here, but I want to know a little bit about yourself. And one of the questions that I really do want to get into is your morning routine. So what exactly is your first hour and a half, 2 hours like for you when you wake up in the morning?
So I love plugging this book. But have you ever read The Miracle Morning?
I haven't, no.
Super easy read. I honestly can't remember the name of the guy right now, but The Miracle Morning. And it was a book that I read a little while ago, and it really kind of put out a systematic way of having a great morning. Mm-hmm. Based on personal development and the key fundamentals of personal development. You've got writing, reading, exercise, silence. It kind of goes into some of the different kind of methods that you can really bring that energy into your life. So I took that, and I've kind of made it work for myself. My business is wherever my phone and I am. I'm traveling all the time. I don't always have a gym nearby. I don't always have what I need, but I can create kind of the same experience. So for me, it's literally waking up and being excited for the way that you start your day. Like don't wake up and read an email first right away. If in fact, I don't actually work before 10 o'clock.
Really?
I will not work before 10 o'clock. That's the space I've created for myself. Of course, there's the experience where I've got a client, he's in a foreign country right now. Maybe I need to talk to him at 2 a.m. That's fine. But as a rule, not before 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And for people, sometimes they like to start at 7. Start at 7. But, so no emails, nothing before 10 a.m. This for me is filled with meditation. Really putting intention towards my day.
Okay.
The first thing I do is wake up, drink a ton of water, hydrate myself. I love coffee, have some coffee, but then I go into really the way I want to set the tone for my day. I learned this thing, I was at a wolf sanctuary recently, and when the sun comes up, a wolf will howl, and all of the pack will start howling. And you're probably like, where's he going with this?
No.
So someone told me that what happens is the wolf will howl, and the rest of the pack gets in resonance. And they resonate, or they create a resonance amongst the pack so that they're all on the same frequency for that day. And they howl throughout the day, but scientists believe that that's what they're doing. So for me, to segue back, what I'm doing is creating an experience in my morning that sets the energy for my day. So I want to meditate, I want to really get to that place of like, what do I want to bring into my day? What's the intention I want to bring into my day? Eating food that is really in the direction of the way that I want to experience my day.
So, and sorry to kind of go back again, but as far as the meditation goes, is there a certain mantra that you use when you meditate, or?
It depends. I mean, there's a couple.
Okay.
So you can do mantra-based meditation, and that's kind of, you're looking at an intention. One of my favorite ways to meditate is actually to meditate on a question.
Okay.
So kind of everybody right now is living their life into a question, whether they know it or not. Who am I? What am I here for? What's the most I can get out of this day? Where's love? Mm-hmm. One of those things. So when you meditate in the morning, you want to think about like, what's the question you're asking right now? And so if you go into your meditation, you either have the question or you're looking for the question. And one of my favorite ones to do is, what's the question I should be asking today? And really getting to that place of, okay, what is the question I need to be asking today in order to get to where I want to go? And sometimes you want to get to the base root of like, well, what if I just went for it? And I love that question. Like, what if I didn't have to prepare? What if I didn't have to do, all these steps? What if I just went for it? What if I just did it? And so I love meditating on a question. The other way is you can meditate on, the experience you want to have. You can meditate on power. You can meditate on going back to kind of childhood stuff. You can relive experiences. You can, whatever's going to empower you. Does that answer your question?
For sure, yeah. So you do your meditation, and then as far as your morning breakfast, what exactly are you eating in the mornings?
It really depends. I'm kind of an opportunist, so
okay.
If it's cooked for me, perfect. But for the most part, I love my macronutrients. Breaking it up, good combination of carbs, fats, and proteins, and just really, I think to bring it in, everything that you do should have either like the Simon Sinek start with why, but there should be a purpose to things. So what I see a lot of in the self-help industry, or you see people giving advice, and it's very fragmented, and it doesn't make sense in the grand picture of people's lives. So when people say, I want to eat a bread at breakfast, or I want to meditate, or I want to work out, or I want to get a new job, great. But what's the overall experience? What's the big commitment that you want to have in your life?
Right.
If you're not really that committed to your fitness, and you really don't have an objective, it doesn't matter what you eat. It doesn't matter if you meditate. It doesn't matter if you do nothing in your day, if you scroll Facebook from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. It really doesn't matter. Because if you don't have something that you're committed to, you really don't know what you're doing. There's no real method to your madness. Now, if you don't know what your commitment is and you're looking for that, that's okay. But for me, I have some very kind of strong and basic commitments that I'm always working towards.
So these are end goals that you've set for yourself, and yeah.
Exactly. And so inside of that commitment, that determines my actions. If I'm committed to a healthy, happy body, well, then I'm going to eat and I'm going to work out in that way.
Right.
I'm not necessarily always going for the six-pack, benching 400 pounds. I'm going for a nice balance, a body that really supports me and my goals and allows me to live the active life and really represents me really being in partnership with my body versus using it as a tool to get what I need.
Right, yeah.
So, I can't really stress the importance of having that larger commitment to then fit your actions inside of. If you want more peace in your body or in your life, go meditate. If you are pretty happy with the level of peace and, you're only doing it because other people say you should, it's okay, but you're going to kind of waste your time.
Right, yeah.
So, all the way back to the breakfast, it really kind of depends on what I'm working on. If I've got a goal that I'm going for, I've got a challenge that I'm going for, then I'm going to eat in line with that. And I really recommend people to really look at what their end goal is and seek out a professional and say, hey, this is where I'm going. What should I be eating? This is the goal that I have, or this is the experience I want to have. This is the level I want. Now go find someone who lives, eats, breathes, and thinks about that all day long, because they will save you a ton of time.
Right.
And say, just eat this. Like, okay, great, thanks. Or go try to figure it out, I guess.
Yeah. So I'll wrap it up here with one last question for you. As far as suggesting books for the viewers and listeners, what would you suggest as far as personal development goes?
Yeah. Okay. So if you are someone that's in the kind of the meta world and you're looking for to dip your toe into the spiritual side of personal development, The Untethered Soul and The Alchemist is
okay.
The two books that I'd recommend for that. If you're looking at your strategic type stuff, you look at The Miracle Morning, and I would not pass up Napoleon Hill's The Law of Success.
Yeah.
Some great principles in there. It's kind of, those are the big ones that I like to hit on. And, yeah.
So those would be the ones that you'd highly recommend.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So if the listeners and viewers of the podcast want to get in touch with you somehow, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Awesome. So they can email me at james@reclaimingwarrior.com.
Okay, we'll put that up in the show notes too.
Awesome. Also check out the website. It's going to be rolling out in the next kind of couple of weeks. It was in its development stage. And there's always... the thing that we're doing right now is we're actually building a community of people that are looking to get, kind of put their toes into the water of self-help. Mm-hmm. Not even self-help, but personal development, personal mastery, conscious leadership. They don't quite know what that is. So right now we're building communities around just kind of introducing people to what is possible, what is my purpose, where am I going? And if they're really interested in getting in a part of that community, by all means get in touch with us. If it's not our community, we can put you in touch with a community that is, really geared towards what you want.
For sure. Now, are you guys hanging out on Twitter or Facebook, or it's mostly just...
Definitely Facebook, definitely Twitter. Both James Butler or Reclaiming Warrior, they'll be able to find us on either of those. Perfect.
Well, this has been a fantastic 3-part documentary podcast, but this has been awesome, and I'm sure it's going to go over quite well. So thank you so much, sir.